Hi everyone, it's Sean Sanderlands from Pulse Markets here today. We're here with Kleos Space, a space defence company listed on the Australian Stock Exchange. We're talking with Andy Bowyer, the CEO. We've got some questions today just to go over what's happening with the company. We've noticed there's been some recent weakness in the share price due to a recent capital raise, which we've sort of been watching it for a while, and we think that weakness is overdone. So I'm looking at taking positions personally and advising clients for it today. And before I do any investing, I always like to get some information on the company. So I've got some questions for Andy Bowyer today, and let's get to it. Hi, Andy, how are you?
Great, thanks for having me here, Sean. It's always good to get some messaging out, get our communications out there, and educate the marketplace with regard to what we're doing. So thanks very much for having me.
That's great. I'm usually investing in tech, or generally resources. So a space defense company is something new for us. So I'm really looking forward to this. Kleos Space, can you tell us what it does and why it's so important, please?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pretty simple story with some complicated tech behind it. We fly and own and operate satellites in space. Those satellites are collecting information about the Earth, what's going on around the Earth, in particular, how the radio spectrum is being used. What that tells us is where the radio spectrum is being used. It tells us where there's communication devices. Where there's communication devices, there's humans. So what we're really selling is where are there humans around the world where you weren't expecting them to be. That's the critical thing here. So we are an Earth observation company observing the Earth, observing human activity, and selling that data as a service. Really important thing is how accurate that data is. We really need to provide our customers, which tend to be in the defense security sector. We need to provide accurate data. We need to show where people are around your borders, around your coastlines, perhaps performing illegal activities such as smuggling, illegal fishing, etc. We need to find those activities very, very accurately and provide that information to our customer, which is what we're doing. The way we do that is through these satellites, as I said, in space. We're the only people in the world that fly clusters of 4 satellites very close together. So we have 4 satellites flying about 100 kilometers apart in a diamond formation. And we collect these radio transmissions at each one of those. So picture above my here is 4 satellites flying above around the Earth, collecting that information. The data we sell is geospatial data. So it's points on the Earth where we found that human activity. And we sell that, whether it's a maritime environment or into the land environment, to a wide range of customers globally.
So it's just not about defense, it's also about protecting the oceans and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it tends to be the defense market that protects those environments, whether it's a land environment or maritime environment. So it's defense really with a small d, I suppose you'd say. So our marketplace is intelligence and surveillance and reconnaissance, where you're looking to protect borders. So it could be the coast guards. It could be, we have a lot of interest in the commercial domain as well, whether it is mining companies trying to find illegal miners in sub-Saharan Africa or in the Amazon rainforest, for instance. So there's commercial opportunities there. An oil company wanting to protect their oil rigs offshore, which are often remote now and often completely autonomous. So there's not people on board those oil rigs. They need protecting, and in order to do that, you have to provide surveillance information with regard to what's going on around those assets. So whether you're a big defense agency looking to find out what is happening in the South China Sea, whether you're an oil and gas company wanting to find out what's going on around your assets in a remote part of Africa or in the ocean, we can help with that information with a really important data set.
That's awesome. Sounds like a very big place that obviously the world is huge. How many satellites do you have and how many launches have you done in order to get your network looking over us?
So the way you fly things in Earth observation, because the satellites are going around the Earth quite often, every 90 minutes, the satellites are flying around the Earth, moving quite quickly. So in order to see places more and more often, you need multiple satellites in space to see the same place more often. I often use the analogy in the financial sector that if you have one cluster, it's the equivalent of getting a data point on a stock once a day. If you have multiple clusters, you get that data point more often, so therefore it becomes more operationally useful to you rather than just interesting or historically interesting. So we're building a full constellation of clusters of satellites. First cluster was launched in November last year. That is it's not just a demonstrator, it does all our experimentation for us, it delivers data into customers' hands and it's generating initial revenues with that first cluster. That capability has proved to be even beyond our expectations with regards to technical ability. We're able to geolocate a handheld radio down to a few hundred meters, which is an incredible capability when you're thinking the satellites are 500 kilometers above you and flying at 16,000 kilometers an hour. Winging overhead and can locate a single transmitter down to a few hundred meters. So our accuracy, our capability is absolutely fantastic in what the customer wants. As we launch more satellites, we have more data. And then we're just talking about building out volume because we sell our data by volume, by surveillance area, essentially. So the more we have, the more we're collecting, the more data we have, the higher our revenues go, not just in terms of a linear fashion, but they become more valuable to the customer. So they go up actually exponentially in terms of value because you're able to deliver more operational data rather than just observational data over a period of time. So it changes as we grow out, basically. Our first cluster launched in November last year. That cluster is delivering experimental demonstration data, those initial data sets into customers' hands that they can test, get a feeling for, and prove out all the technology. And to be clear, we are now completely validated from a technological perspective. The satellites are locating transmitters down to a few hundred meters. So the accuracy is absolutely unheard of in terms of a capability, and we're delivering what the customer wants in that sense. We then evolved our satellite technology and launched a second cluster at the end of June, which is our vigilance mission. Our vigilance mission satellites are going through their commissioning and checking out. That data will be even more capable because the satellites are twice as powerful as the first satellites. So they're really, really important to us. The more satellites we have in space, the more data we're collecting, the more data we have to sell. Now a third cluster, which is in build at the moment, launching on the next SpaceX launch later on in the year. Those satellites are twice as capable again as the second satellite. So we're evolving and constantly changing our technology and improving our capability to customers.
Okay, that's really impressive. These customers, who would they be? What contracts do you have in place at the moment?
Well, we're relatively cautious about the way we discuss our sort of customer base for probably obvious reasons with regard to the type of customers that we're working with. The way that we talk about this, we have a very, very large pipeline, over 200 customers in that pipeline currently. Well over 50 of those we have signed agreements with and contracts with to deliver data sets over a period of time. Obviously, some of those are growing data sets. So as we have more data, we can fulfill those contracts and sell it for higher values. So the idea is that we're growing into that maturing capability. So we've proven ourselves, we know what we're doing, we've got some early data sets to customers, and now we're executing against that. So I think this is some of the key messages we really want to get across all the time to our investors and stakeholders and our partners, is that we have two strong fundamentals in this business, one of which is the customer base is validated. We have an incredible pipeline that's been converted into backlog. It's very, very strong in the marketplace. That pipeline is global. We don't rely on one single customer like you would traditionally in the defense sector. We have customers around the world, resellers, integrators, channel partners, tooling providers, all different sizes of businesses, whether it's the big ones like L3Harris down to the smaller entities that we've announced like GSTS. So we've got a very strong customer base, and we now have a technology that's completely validated and proven and delivers what the customer needs. Now we're working through building the volumes up in that data provision so we can fulfill that opportunity from a customer perspective that sits in front of us. So we have both areas of our fundamentals of our business extremely strong. We're now executing, bringing those data systems online, which is complicated and really difficult because we're flying satellites, and that's difficult to do. So that's the bit that we're moving forward with to get enough data in to build the revenues and grow them over the next period of time.
Well, I'm pleased that you mentioned revenues, because that was the next question that I've got here. What does it mean for revenue and growth over the next couple of years?
It's a fantastic opportunity we have in front of us. I think we are sometimes actually even surprised ourselves with the size of the market and the way that the market has come to us with regard to that opportunity. And we are really piggybacking a lot of work that's been done in Earth observation before, particularly with imagery. So taking photos from space. We're doing exactly the same thing, but in the RF spectrum rather than the optical imagery area. So we're really treading quite a well-trod path that the imagery guys made for us over the last 10 or 15 years that opened that marketplace up, that we're able to penetrate much, much faster than that. So I think we don't have to wait 2 years for very, very strong revenues. Those revenues will be much quicker than that, the big revenues, because of that strong work that's already been done in terms of building out the opportunity and the pipeline that sits in front of us. So we have a huge opportunity ahead. I think the other aspect is the data set that we're providing is hugely valuable to the customer. If you imagine you're an analyst looking at data sets every day, the majority of your data you're looking at is imagery, and you're trying to find that needle in the haystack. Where is something going on that I wasn't expecting to see? It's very, very difficult from an imagery perspective from space, because the surveillance is so grainy and poor. You can't make out people, you can't make out small vessels. It's very difficult to find those needles in the haystack. That is what we're delivering to the analysts. We tell the analysts where to look. This is where that needle is. Go and take a look there. That means that the path through to action is much, much shorter, and they're able to deliver a solution much quicker to the end user. And that is where the value lies and why people will spend a lot of money on this sort of data.
Okay, that's excellent. With revenue, there's always costs. What's your current cash burn per month? Do you have a good runway for the moment? Having just done a capital raise, are we safe to invest now and for the short term, not worry about you going to the market again?
Yeah, I think that is fair to say. We're in a very, very strong position in that sense. We did a great capital raise to some fantastic investors, which we're very proud of. That has well funded us, given us a great runway. We've obviously also got the revenues ramping up throughout that time period as well. So that requirement with regard to future cash is much diminished, because of the company's much further down the road and more de-risked than it was. So our biggest expense isn't really Opex. We've kept our Opex very lean, very tight, in order to achieve profitability as fast as we can. That's the whole ethos behind the business, is getting to a profitable status as quickly as we possibly can. We're driven and passionate about getting that. The main cost base in the future is really CapEx, and funding that CapEx can be done through different ways. And we obviously need to continue launching satellites, and we'll look at different methods of doing that. But I think as a business, we're now very well financed, and with a great runway ahead of us, and can take advantage of this opportunity that I was just presenting, of the two fundamentals: the pipeline, the customer base, and the technology sitting behind us.
That's fantastic. We're talking about you growing your customer base, which is what every investor wants to see, especially me looking at investing my own money. One thing we do love are these stocks that have the scalability. We've all seen Afterpay, Z1P, those stocks that just go through the roof. With Kleos, can you scale your business without scaling your costs to the same extent?
Yeah, you can from an Opex perspective. Our business is completely scalable. I mean, that is the whole business model. And our model is to sell the data we're collecting, so the user gets access to a database where they can access data. The more data they're selecting out of there, the more they're paying for it, obviously. The more satellites we have, the more we're feeding into that database. But we don't need to keep increasing our Opex in order to fulfill that increasing demand. What we need to do is spend money on CapEx, which is obviously a wholly different argument in that sense. So we continue to scale the business by leveraging the data, which is our mined data. If you think about it in that sense, how many times can we sell that? And this is where we spend a lot of time on socializing this sort of data, increasing awareness of what you can do with it and the problems it solves, and the way it adds value to the analyst, because we want to tap into those tens of thousands of people around the world that are using geospatial data, that are using satellite imagery data to find solutions. And we should be penetrating all of those people and selling data into all those people as well, because we work in the same area. It is a new data set. That's always a challenge. And we have an adoption rate that we have to go through, the same as any new technology and any new business, whether you're a SaaS company or in our case, a DaaS company. We have to build up that adoption rate and make it as fast as we possibly can. But we've got a great head start so far.
Excellent. In the research I've been doing in the last couple of weeks, because we do thoroughly look at a company before we go into it, I've noticed you've got some multinational, multi-billion-dollar companies that you've partnered with. I mean, your market cap's relatively small, and we do like this when we're investing in companies where you leverage off these big names. But you've got Airbus, L3 Harris. Why such large companies interested in you? I mean, it's tremendous.
Well, because we're doing something unique, and it adds value to what they're doing. You know, as I was describing, the marketplace is really quite siloed, and the traditional space and defense companies like the Airbus and the L3 Harris and all the other guys that are doing, whether it's satellite imagery or synthetic aperture radar imagery, they have a certain capability that is reaching a maturity with regard to market size. We're coming in with a new data set that doesn't just add value to our data. It doesn't just create a valuable data set for our customers. It creates more opportunity for them to leverage their existing data sets by fusing multiple data sets together. This whole analogy of 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4, it equals 5 or 6 when you're talking about data fusion, because you're bringing different complementary data sets together to create something more powerful that is a solution for their end user, which is faster, quicker, better, cheaper. And that's where we add that value to those guys. So it's we're a new, exciting capability that the end user are all over, whether it's big government agencies or what have you, they're all over that. So these guys have to get involved. It's imperative. They would be, if they weren't innovating in that way, they'd be dying for sure.
Thank you. I can obviously see your passion, and that's what companies need, directors, a team behind them that clearly know what they're doing. I know you're not speaking from notes, you're just speaking from virtually off the cuff, which is really impressive. Who else is behind Kleos? I mean, who's the team making all this happen?
Yeah, I'm very, very proud of the team we've built. We've got a board which has been around since before IPO, which we work very, very closely with. My co-founder is still very much working in the business alongside me and is a fantastic asset for the company, somebody I've worked with for 20 years. So there's friendships and a very collegiate atmosphere here, which is a fantastic business. What we've done over the last 12 months is put in place an exec team or C-suite that can deliver against this opportunity with this exciting data set, exciting technology we've got sat behind us, this huge, completely unique technology. And so we put in place a range of guys who are very, very well experienced. We brought in a new CTO, Vinny Furia, who was a director at Spire, who are another big space constellation company. He's got this experience of building out a constellation, leveraging space technologies over a period of time to deliver exceptional capability. I brought in a chief revenue officer, which was quite an early stage to bring a CRO into a company like ours. But I was looking for somebody who had experience to complement mine. I didn't have the experience of delivering a data set into a wide range of customers. I've never built a subscription-based business. Eric has many times over. So I brought Eric in with his experience. He's built businesses up that have been sold for lots and lots of money, and he's got an incredible reputation in our industry. So I brought Eric in. I'm proud to work alongside and learn from him to help develop this business into something fantastic. We also have an incredible COO, CFO, etc. So we have a very, very strong team who are all then supported by some great technologists. And what we've done is we haven't built we haven't got hundreds of people working for us. We've got 35 people working for us. So we work extremely cleverly, extremely leanly, and we have exceptional people who are at the top of their games who can deliver what we're wanting from them.
Okay, that's great. That does sound really impressive. Now, we've talked very highly of the company so far, all the positives, but now I'm going to ask the hard questions. Competitors. I mean, we can't always be nice. Competitors, Hawkeye, their recent valuation raising. Can you just give us a little bit of a comparison between you and them? And are they a threat or are you the threat?
It's an interesting question. Obviously, I get asked about Hawkeye all the time. They're a good group of guys. They're doing some clever things. There's some great technology behind there, and I'm proud to be working in the same community as them. They're a good company. No criticism there at all. I think what we're doing is actually very different. It looks similar on the outside, but when you get into what it is we're delivering, how they're delivering, their route to market strategy, our route to market strategy, it's completely different. And we spread out, and actually our customer bases don't really cross over in that sense. I think what we try and do is concentrate on what we're doing and what we're passionate about, what we're delivering in terms of our data sets and the way that we are selling our data into our marketplace, supporting the analyst. We're not doing any analytic products. We're creating a data set that we're heavily leveraging from our perspective of launching satellites, that we create this scalable capability, a scalable database of data that we can sell to anyone. And I think that's really an interesting approach that differentiates us from our sort of notional competition, if you like. But I think what we try and do is really concentrate, as I said, on delivering against our opportunity. Who is our customer base, and how do we make sure that we're fulfilling what they need, fulfilling their contracts, and growing as fast as we possibly can, launching as many satellites as we can, continually improving that technology, not resting on our laurels. And I think that's very, very much our approach. Rather than constantly looking over our shoulder at our competitors or other people in the marketplace, we're just going full at it to really gain as much market adoption as we can over a very short period of time.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot for your time today. I think the last thing we'll touch on is the valuation. The stock's currently trading around the 70-cent level with a valuation of about 125 million. With the revenue pipeline that you've got coming up, we think with the recent share price action, it's down about 30% from its highs. We do think it's quite compelling at these levels.
No, I appreciate that. I think we are in a fantastic place. We have everything going for us. We've got a market that's proven, that we've been proving out over a long period of time, growing it and growing and growing it beyond even anything we projected before. And we have a technology that was very high risk, because we're launching satellites into space, doing something that had never been done before. It's now fully proven. We published a research report last week, technical note on the details of what we're doing and how we're delivering that capability to the customer, completely proven now. So we are, to that extent, pretty de-risked, both commercially and both technically. So I think the opportunity is there, and the opportunity is there for us to grow into a fantastic business, and I'll be proud to be part of that.
Okay, Andy, that sounds really comprehensive. Investors are always curious. What are some of the near-term milestones or price catalysts that they can look forward to?
This, whether it's near-term, mid-term, long-term, this is all about execution now against the plan. The plan is public. We're launching more satellites, getting more assets into space with more capability and building up that database, delivering against the evolving and changing customer requirement. But I think more importantly to that is executing against the revenue plan, executing against turning a fantastic pipeline that the team have built into backlog, into revenues, into cash. And that's something that we are fully committed to doing, both just on the short term, but also building out to the medium, long term as well, as we look to grow the business into the substantial business we think it can be.
One thing I've noticed when we're talking about revenue, you've spoken how the technology worked with the first cluster, then you've launched your second cluster and it's bigger, better, or maybe not bigger, but it's just more efficient.
Yeah.
It gets more information. Then you've got your third cluster. Bearing in mind, you've already had your first cluster out there and working tracking data. That would have been tracking revenue to some extent now. You've got your pipeline growing. What's your sort of expectations of revenue in the future with this growth that you're currently experiencing, that the market can see?
I can talk around what we expect to see from the marketplace for sure, and what we see as expectations from the market, from our our customer base. And what we're trying to do really is we're focused on making the data as accessible as possible. What we don't want to do is say this is only available to 1 or 2 US government agencies or 1 Australian agency that's going to pay a boatload of money on, but we have to be reliant on that single customer. What we're trying to do is build breadth. And by doing that, we're de-risking the company. And in order to build that breadth, we have to have a range of pricing models. So what we do is we charge per area, so by volume of data, so per million square kilometers in our case, and we offer a certain amount of data on a monthly basis. And that increases, obviously, the more satellites you have and the more data collect and the more payload you have and all those sort of good things. But that's the basic metrics of it. We obviously have a minimum cost. So at the moment, our minimum price is about $7,500 a month US. However, as we sort of grow and have more data accessible, some of the customers that are at 7,500 will remain at 7,500 because they're only interested in their little area of the world. Then there's the larger customers. We want to be able to offer lots of areas of interest because they have overseas interests or whatever it might be. Those guys are moving up to easily up to the 100,000 a month stage over the very near term, in fact. So we have a very strong pipeline, as I've talked about, of around 200 qualified deals in that pipeline. Over 50 of those we've engaged contractually, and we're building those up from a revenue perspective in terms of quite a complex pricing model because it's based on area and amounts of revisits and all those sorts of things. But just to give you some guidance, starting at about 7,500 a month is where we're starting off at.
Okay, fantastic. Andy, with these milestones, with the revenue, I sort of do see it is difficult for you to forecast because with ASX business rules, you've got to announce the other counterparty to a contract. And in your case, if you're dealing with defence organisations, they may not want to be represented.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. We have to be cognizant of national security requirements, and our data does fall squarely in the national security requirement because we're telling people where there is activity around their borders, where there are dangers to their assets. Governments and government agencies aren't necessarily going to want us to name who they are and what have you. So there's a challenge there, obviously, from a contractual and a commercial perspective. And I think that's fine because we can, very soon we can be delivering information about where the revenues are going and starting to get those more detailed forecasts in place. And I think that's really going to be a turning point for the business, and one I'm very much looking forward to.
Excellent, Andy. I really do thank you for your time. If clients have any questions, please feel free to email them through. I can certainly pass them on. But I think over the next couple of months, as you ramp up with your third cluster and revenue starts to come through, we'll be looking forward to some ASX announcements, which should, in fact, change the trajectory of your share price. So, yeah, this looks really great. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sean. Thanks for having me.